welcome in everyone to another edition of the GSMC College Football Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. We have a great show for you today. We are going to start with some news out of Fox. They are looking to expand their Friday package in college football this upcoming year, so we'll talk about that a little bit. And then we'll get into some QB rankings that came out from Chris Sims from the NBC. He had some very interesting rankings that have gone back and forth throughout the years, so I have some reactions to those. And then we have a couple of sequels coming up in the back end of the show. We have another edition of Biggest Questions going into spring. There are just so many that I could not fit them all into one segment. And then we got a repeat of breakout players on the offensive side of the ball for this upcoming season. So a ton ahead, a really great show for you all, but let's start with this. I want to remind you all that we get a ton of questions and comments throughout the show, and the best way for you all to see that on the screen and maybe we can have a fun back and forth throughout the show is to use the link at the bottom of the screen, GSMCPodcast.net. It's a huge help not only to us here at the network, but to you all to see your questions and comments on the screen, and maybe I can comment on them and we can have a fun back and forth here. Again, that's GSMCPodcast.net. Alright, let's jump right in, why don't we? Because it's been a crazy time in college football. There's been a million things happening across conference realignment, transfer portal, coaches changes. Everything has been happening in the last couple of days, in the last couple of weeks. But this is one that I think everyone can get around. I think everyone can get behind this change that is coming soon. It looks like Fox is trying to increase their Friday package, and it looks like they are going to take the primetime slot on Fridays this season to show one of their premier games. It doesn't look like it's just going to be, usually in past years, the Friday game has been one of the lower level games in the grand scheme of things, but it looks like they're trying to bump up the profile of that game, bump up the ability to kind of monopolize Friday in the college football game. So these games apparently will be between the Big 12, the Big 10, and the Mountain West, and obviously the Big 10 and the Big 12 will be the major draws there, but there's some Mountain West teams that'll be plenty fun to watch, and I'll get into those a little bit later. But the schedule for these games seems to be a little bit up in the air. The networks meet in May to kind of decide who gets what time slot, all of the logistics of how everything gets put into place on the TV schedules, so it'll be interesting to see what games actually get put in those positions and how often we get, the Big 10 and the Big 12 in those positions, because I think if you ask the conference commissioners in both those sports, they'd like their teams to play on Saturdays, but at the end of the day, if you can get a standalone slot on a primetime game, I don't think you'd turn your nose up at that by any means. So I think Fox, they had said that their hope in all of this is to kind of dominate the football weekend. As we know, they have Big Noon Kickoff on Saturday, which is a huge draw for so many people. And then on Sunday, they kind of dominate the NFL game. They have the game of the week for the most part pretty much every single week. They have, incredible amounts of games on Fox, them and CBS splitting most of the responsibilities on Sundays. So if this were to pass and they were able to put, let's say, Michigan State UCLA game or Arizona Texas Tech or whatever it is, being able to put those games in that Friday slot will give them, you're watching Fox on Friday night and then you're waking up and watching Fox at noon to watch Big Noon Kickoff, and then right on Sunday you're right back at your seat watching Fox at 1 o'clock. So the Fox is obviously trying to expand their football coverage and kind of, in the grand scheme of things, probably, shorten the gap between them and ESPN when it comes to overall broadcast of sports overall, but especially football. I think Fox is really starting to chip away at ESPN in that respect. And the funny thing, or the interesting thing about this change is it doesn't look like this is going to be just another game. It sounds like they are going to make this slot one of their main slots for the weekend. So whether that's the number 2 game that they have under their umbrella, or number 3 or number 4, I don't know. But it looks like this is going to be a game that everyone's going to want to watch. So it's a very interesting thing, and it has a lot of a lot of pros and cons. Obviously, some of the cons are, people like to do things on Friday night, so you might lose some of the viewership there. You will have to convince teams to do some short weeks and things of that nature. But the pro, I think, really outweighs the con, where you have people like me and people like, I'm sure, a lot of you that just want to watch college football at all times, every single day throughout the year. So a Friday game that I'd love to tune into doesn't sound like the worst thing in the world to me. But the Friday games took over, really. This has kind of become a thing because WWE SmackDown, which used to be on that time slot in Fox, has made its way to the USA Network. So they needed a replacement, and they felt like college football would be a great way to do that. They do think that this will increase their viewership, which makes sense, but also WWE is year-round, and this is only for part of the year, so it'll be interesting to see how they fill that slot in the meantime, but also, do the numbers actually back what they're saying, and we'll get more viewership in this 13-week pocket than we would get the entire year for WWE. I think it would be very interesting to see those numbers towards the end of the football season. But I think Friday games, obviously, there's been a lot in the opening weekends of the year. There's been some on Thanksgiving. They're kind of interspersed throughout the year, but have never really been the main event, right? Everyone's looking forward to Saturday. Everyone's trying to get involved on Saturday, and that's kind of the day that everyone looks forward to. But at the end of the day, I think there's a ton of really good things that can come out of this. I think especially for conferences like the Mountain West or even the Big 12 in some scenarios, I think having those teams on a bigger display, on a primetime slot every week, will definitely help them in terms of just getting their name out there and being a part of the college football conversation, with the SEC and the Big Ten kind of monopolizing a lot of the college football game as we know it. But I think this, at the very least, helps the Big Ten, or the Big 12, excuse me, and the Mountain West stay in the conversation, stay a part of the game, and have at least a lot of people watching them on Friday nights. So, and this is not a new thing for any of these conferences or any of these teams necessarily. The Big Ten has had a limited Friday package since 2017, mostly on the Big Ten Network, or FS1, so not necessarily on the Big Fox Network, which will be a massive upgrade. The Big 12 has had 3 night games on ESPN throughout last season, so they're no strangers to it at all. And then the Mountain West had a number on CBS Sports Network, along with 2 on FS1. So none of this is new to these conferences. These are the conferences that tend to play Friday games. The ACC dabbles a little bit. I don't know if the SEC plays a ton of Friday games. They might play none, but these are conferences that are used to that kind of schedule and can kind of adapt to that quicker than others. So I really think this is something that everyone's going to end up loving. I don't think anyone is going to be too upset with being able to fill more of your time with really high-level football. But there are downfalls, right? Some people don't love the idea of having to give up a Friday night to watch a game, or things of that nature. But for me, it's not a big hurdle by any means. So I'm very excited about this. I think, especially with it being possibly the second biggest or third biggest matchup throughout the year, or throughout that week. I mean, I'm a huge fan of it. I think it's going to be awesome. It's probably going to be Jason Benetti and Brock Heward on the call, because they tend to be the second group in the Fox rankings, right after the incomparable Gus Johnson and Joel Klatt, one of the best duos in the game. So I love Jason Benetti. I love Brock Heward. I think they're a great team, and I think if you do have that second game, it'll be a perfect, appetizer going into the week, a perfect thing to get everyone in the football mood, and also it just expands the number of days in a week that we get to watch high-level football. So I'm not mad by that in any sense of the word. But one of the bigger reasonings for this, I'm sure, is Fox is constantly in a fight with ESPN. I think we all know that those are the top two dogs when it comes to sports broadcasting, and those are the people that continue to kind of battle with each other for the biggest shows, the biggest viewership, all of that type of stuff. And obviously, ESPN has been top billing for a very long time. They've been the go-to for pretty much every sport, pretty much every breakdown, every TV show. They've been the godfather in all of this for a very long time. But Fox has really been heating up over the last couple of years, whether that's the shows that they have on a daily basis on their networks becoming much more popular, with Undisputed and things of that nature, or things like this just being a bigger part of the college football landscape and the NFL landscape. I think Big Noon Kickoff has really taken off over the past couple of years, as more and more people have become a little bit disenthused by the new direction of College Game Day. I think more and more people have been tuning over to Big Noon Kickoff. So Fox has a lot of momentum in a lot of different areas with that battle against ESPN, and obviously it's a big hill to climb, but I think this is something that is a relatively easy change to make and relatively quick, and I think will help their brand incredibly, and will at the very least bring more people to Fox and bring more people to these other conferences, especially the Mountain West. And I know when you think about, it's going to be Big 12, Big 10, or Mountain West, you're thinking, okay, so whenever it's Mountain West, I'll go ahead and tune out and do my normal Friday activities. But I will say the Mountain West is going to be a ton of fun next year. I think one of the teams that a lot of people were not expecting to burst onto the scene but did a year ago is UNLV. They were in the Mountain West Championship, which no one thought they were going to be able to get to. And then Boise State is inviting Malachi Nelson into the mix, coming from USC, was a uber talented kid coming out of high school, and things just didn't work at USC. It looked like he was a little bit further from starting than people had envisioned when he made his commitment to USC and got on campus. So he found his way to Boise State. I think it's a good situation for him to show off his ability. And as we know in today's college football, you can play a lot of places and still find your way to the next level. So Malachi Nelson, the journey is not over for him by any means, just because he took a minor step down going to Boise State. So I'll definitely be tuning in whenever those teams are on. And then the San Jose State, there's tons of other teams that definitely deserve this spot, and I'm very excited that I'm good to be able to watch a little bit more Mountain West football. That's always a fun thing to deal with. So ton to like about this. I think it's very possible that ESPN tries to counter with their own Friday night game, try to boost up their Friday night footprint to kind of go off of this to kind of counter this move. But who knows? I think at the end of the day, this is a great thing for everyone. I think obviously it's one less game on Saturday, but I don't think anyone would argue with the idea that Saturday is a lot of games to keep track of. So taking one off the plate necessarily wouldn't be the worst thing in the world in my eyes. So very excited about that change. It obviously will be interesting to see what exact games we get and how much of a move this is, because that is where all of that will be defined. But for the time being, I'm very excited about this change. I think it brings a totally new setup to the schedule of college football and gets me watching college football earlier in the week. So I have no problems about that by any means. But we're going to take a little break here, and when we come back, we're going to get into some quarterback rankings. Chris Sims released his rankings for the top 6 guys in this upcoming draft class, and I have some thoughts. So when we come back, we will get into all of that.